No, what? No, yes, wait, what? No, wait, what?
See? Kelly, I told you it
Is
wouldn't
this
matter.
thing on?
You still wouldn't get it.
Oh, look at that.
We're never
Wait,
gonna get
wait,
this.
I was Zoe's comment.
I did not even realize. I looked at the thing and we had been live for 10 seconds and I'm just
Right.
staring at the screen. Just
You're the one who
it's
told
been a
us.
long
Wait till that thing goes
it's been a
away and
long
it's
week.
Highlight Zoe Graves' comment.
What, coming in hot?
Everyone.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
before
Absolutely.
that, right before we went
Oh.
live,
Which
they
I get-
put in, "Are we going to get another chaotic opening?" And it's like,
Yes.
oh yeah.
And I'm sitting here as the stream is live thinking like, no, we're going to be professional this time. Staring at the screen. Not saying
Part of you thought.
Like, who knows what could happen?
Yeah.
While we're letting folks trickle in, I need to point out Yvette's already coming in hot with the Star Trek hot take that Earl Grey tea is simply hot perfume.
I'll be honest, it's not as
We
good as
missed
Irish
that.
breakfast.
Listen, Yvette, I already just love you more than life itself, and every time
it is.
you say anything, I fall more deeply in love with you. So
I
just
swear.
mwah.
I swear. Yes, Yvette. Yes.
It's no Irish breakfast. That's
I also
fine.
can't wait to see you soon.
Oh my god!
On
Yes,
the boat.
On the
On
boat.
the boat. On the
Ah,
boat.
so sad
On
that
the
I'm not
boat.
going.
Come
so
find us.
sorry, I
We're
wish
going
you
on the Star
were.
Trek cruise. We will
There's
have
Yvette.
some fun pins.
Oh yes,
Come
we will have.
find
Yes,
us.
if you're coming. Yes, if you're coming on the cruise, find us, and we will give you a Lambda Quadrant pin.
Also,
Yeah,
come
oh.
to Deck 6. Deck
Yes.
6.
And while we're being chaotic as folks are trickling in, I wanted to do another quick shout out to the folks who were in the chat last night. I literally I climbed into bed and I teared up and cried a little. Folks were just being so cool and supportive, and it's it's not that I didn't expect that, right? Because I know the circle of folks that we're hanging out with for this event, so it's not a surprise that people were cool, but it's still it was just felt good in the heart
Yeah.
place. So all of our friends who were here last night, I deeply appreciate you. You did me a kindness.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there is yes. So tomorrow, please come back for the pre-show. Yvette and I and some other people are going to be doing that. We're going to be reading out the categories. I will be
Showing
wearing
your
my.
hot faces.
I will be wearing the Gucci suit that I wore to the Picard premiere as something ridiculous to do on a live stream. Who else can say they've done that? I guess.
See, okay, and
but-
that's the LA in you is saying the Gucci suit. The New York in me is saying, tell them how you got it on sale. You never want to pay the price.
It was on sale.
That's
It was
so
on sale.
impressive, honey.
If anyone in LA needs a stylist, let me know.
It has pockets.
It does have pockets.
We should say that your stylist only dresses men,
Men,
correct?
only men. That's true.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
only men.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's sexist.
It's a lady.
Or they're a men's fashion site.
I adore that the look I saw on Randy's face for a hot second was the look of not realizing that I was joking, and I feel like for just half a second you were trying to oh my god, how do I
Are you kidding?
Definitely.
Am I kidding? I don't know.
Yeah, the unpopular Star Trek opinion is that everything is sexy.
Randy, there's always love for your hair.
Yeah,
There was
it's
love for
good.
your hair last
It's
night.
impressive.
True.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I feel like the chat's pretty lively and has been since before we went live, which we were watching and we were real excited to see everyone
Yeah.
hanging out. So we can probably just go ahead and do the thing. Yeah, we want to just
my shirt
toss
says
our
Lambda Quadrant.
Yeah. The Lambda
we want to just
The
go ahead and
gayest
toss our metaphorical grenades into the middle of the room to
Yeah, let's
see.
do that.
So
Wait,
first of all,
wait,
intros.
probably. Yeah, I was gonna say if we have
Yeah.
new people.
So again, we are the Lambda Quadrant. We are a fan group of Star Trek fans that love talking about queer stuff. We try to take the love out to conventions and have conversations with folks, create community for queer and trans folks in the Star Trek fandom, and then do a little bit of education outreach for folks who are allies but curious or want to have conversations and just have questions. We're here for that as well. And yeah, so we're here doing this live stream thing. The panel is we're going to be defending our unpopular Star Trek opinions,
Good, we
which
have them.
I feel the need to say that I have a whole lot of those, and it was a very, very difficult exercise for me to choose only one for time's sake.
Love it.
So yeah, so my name's Callie. My pronouns are they them. We probably don't need to go through the whole identity thing because that's not so much the panel, but yeah, I'm a big old homo.
Checks out.
Big old queer.
Oh, that's good.
All
I'll
right.
go. Hi.
Cool.
I'm
Star
Jenny.
Trek.
And I'm going to say it again because this will be the second time I get to say it live in public. I am pansexual. Yes, it's now publicly out there. There you go, friend.
Fucking proud of you
Love you all.
and happy for you.
Thank you all. So, yes.
Anne Marie.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Randy,
Wait,
please
we're
put
gonna
Anne Marie.
Yes,
If you weren't here last night, shame on you. And if you were, you know why that's so hilarious.
If you were, you need to go. Not yet. When we're done, go back,
Go
and
back and
the
watch,
other one.
yeah. That
Also,
being
if you
said,
thought
I'm-
I was chaotic last night, I was sober. Ain't now.
And I
Ain't
love
now.
you so much.
I-
Was just at my favorite
I'm-
pub in
let's
New York
let
City.
Randy introduce himself, my
Yeah,
love.
sorry.
I'm Randy, and I'm hashtag just gay.
Also from last night.
Oh, from last night.
Yeah.
That's call that a
Gay.
callback, kids. It's a
Yep.
callback.
Okay.
Bringing it back around.
I'm
Go for it,
Anna.
Anna.
I'm on the A spectrum, specifically demisexual.
We don't know her. She Zoom bumped us, but we let her stay.
And I'm biromantic also. So Kelly, I heard you've got some opinions.
Oh,
That
is it?
might
All
not
right,
be
am I
right.
going first? I feel like yeah. I mean that is the build up.
mean,
Dave, I'm ready for Callie versus Worf.
We're
Okay.
ready.
So before we get back to like being funny and making jokes, I need to be like actually serious for a real hot second, because there is some context that I need to build for my opinion about Worf, and I want to just like
Okay.
make it known that I am aware of some of the sensitive nature of this, right? Because so much of Worf's backstory comes from him having been like violently removed from his culture. And he had his culture stolen from him. And so a lot of the ways that he interacts with Klingons, like that has a lot of resonance for folks in real life. And so I want to be clear in saying that, like, when I say this, I get that, and that is actually not my that's not the reason that I have a problem with Worf.
Will you state the actual opinion?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I'm
my
curious.
hot
Diary.
take about Worf is that honestly, the more I watch Star Trek, the less I like him as a character. And I say this as someone who, like, my like hyper specific Star Trek special interest is Klingons and Klingon culture and Klingon language. And so there's a couple of reasons. A
Like,
smaller
they
one that I
learn
keep coming
the
back to.
language.
Yeah. Worf is a crap dad. Is that the opinion? Well, I mean, that's part of it for
Yeah.
sure.
And he was working on it in Next Gen, and then he's like,
Yeah.
actually,
So the issue that I tend to have with Worf whenever he interacts with Klingon stuff is not that he is unfamiliar with his own culture, because we talked about, like, we understand why that's a thing. My problem is that he is such a dick to everyone about how to properly Klingon.
Yeah.
And he himself seems to have just been like, I read a book and now I get to be a jerk to you about what a Klingon is and isn't. So, okay, Hugo, this is other important context. We had this discussion before because we're thinking about, like, there's a certain group of people, if I could say Threshold is one of the best episodes of Voyager, unironically, actually, there's a group of people who that would not be an unpopular opinion for.
Right.
So I think our general criteria has been, like, when we say a thing, what do we generally get back from people? Worf improved tremendously as a character when he moved over to DS9. I'm gonna say I kind of disagree. I don't entirely disagree, but I kind of disagree, because DS9 is where Worf literally did terrorism because he didn't like that he was on Risa. Yeah. He did an actual terrorism because he was mad at Jadzia because Jadzia was having fun. And again, I get it, but it's another more realistic way it plays out, that like absolutely you have trauma, you're dealing with that, and that makes you that causes you to act badly sometimes, but that doesn't mean that it's okay. That doesn't mean that it's okay to have your trauma reactions hurt other people. And also, like, Worf was old enough at that point, like he had the chance to like work all of that stuff out to the point where like there's not really an excuse anymore.
One of my favorite things about that episode was it He Who Does Not Have Sin or whatever.
Let He Who Was Without Sin, I think.
Yes. I'm Jewish. I don't know Christian stuff. That's a Christian quote. Let he who is not sin throw the first stone. I don't know. But
you got it.
I'm drunk. Anyway, my favorite quote about that episode is that Siddig was told about some aspects of it, and he was like, "What? Worf did what?" Because Siddig fully did not remember filming that episode, because that was the episode that he was shooting while his son was about to be born.
So he's just his head was on other places.
Yeah. And I love the fact that like he's like, wait, what happened? Worf did what? When he was like told about it at a panel.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I like when I think of who I love that epitomizes the positivity that I see in Klingon culture. Kern comes to mind. Martok comes to mind. Not entirely, because they both do the like hyper masculine sort of thing a little too much sometimes. But when I think about there's a big difference between what Klingon culture sells itself as being and what we see it being on screen, right? Because most of what we get on screen is government and military folks. So realistically, we don't really know a lot about the average Klingons day to day outside of the military and the government, right? And so if I think about what the average Klingon might be, given what they like ascribe to themselves as a culture, it actually sounds like a lot less toxic than what we see on screen, right? Because it's obviously there's some of the the hyper masculinity, like machismo type thing, but there's also like the strong sense of integrity that's really important. That I feel like Worf applies that in very weird ways.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It goes along with what you're saying. So how do you feel about the episodes of Birthright now, since Worf finds the Romulans that were captured by the Klingons, right? And the young kids know nothing really of their culture. So he goes in and he like explains them up. Here's the culture you're missing out.
Yeah.
And some of that is true, right? Like the integrity and that type of thing, and what it means to actually be a warrior to a certain extent. But now with all of the things you're saying, which I agree with you, I mean, my take, part of my take of this is that Worf isn't actually either a good security officer either, and I think it's actually because he's conflicted. Like, I think he's got all this conflict going on. Like, he's trying to be a Klingon, you know what I mean?
Right.
But he grew up on Earth. You're in Starfleet. You gotta be a Starfleet officer, but that folks against Klingon. So I'm curious now, because your opinion has changed. Like, how do you feel about those episodes?
I mean, I think I like that bit of the episode, and I mean, in fairness, it's one episode, and we don't see a ton of the like behind the scenes conversations, because I think what Worf is teaching them in that episode is a lot of very broad foundational type stuff. The thing that I keep coming back to is there's I forget what episode it's from, but Worf and Guinan are on the phaser range, and Guinan is like no. Klingons laugh. You don't laugh. You know, where Worf is just so sure and so dismissive about what he thinks Klingons are versus what Guinan, who is hundreds of years old, knows to be untrue. Yeah.
Right.
I think if we were to get more of him doing that sort of interpersonal, a good Klingon doesn't laugh, a good Klingon doesn't make jokes, a good Klingon doesn't, et cetera, I would have a lot stronger feelings about it. But I think in that episode, it's a lot more of Worf teaching them to embrace the spirit of being a warrior. When he takes Volk out on the hunt, and they're just super hyped about this is what we were built for. Yeah. That all tracks for me. I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think Worf would be a good 101.
There we go.
That I remember watching that episode Birthright with my dad, and he and I were watching it, and we were thinking about how when all the Klingons start singing the song that they'd sung before, almost as a lullaby, but they start singing it with this passion in them, and as they've now reconnected to their culture in a way they never had. My dad and I were talking about how interesting it was how the Romulans are then super not about it. And I think what's very key about that episode is that what's oppressive there is not that it's not they've forgotten how to be Klingon and that makes them wrong. What really the oppression is that once they start to reconnect with their culture, the Romulans are then no, that's not okay. When right. It's hey, and it's as personally as someone who is on my mom's side, I'm Jewish, but on my dad's side, I'm Irish Catholic. And then I grew up in an area where I was one of the few Jewish kids. In a lot of ways, I was very detached from my culture. But rather than being going around telling people gatekeepy things about being Jewish, right. In some ways, I feel very nervous in Jewish spaces because I go, oh, do I really fit in? But then, in college, I made a point to talk to the rabbi they had on campus to discuss this and said, I'm not religious, but I want to be in touch with the culture. And he just explained a lot of things to me, and I ended up feeling very welcomed and accepting. Thank God. I know there's other times where people don't feel accepted in this kind of situation. And what I then tell, I tend to teach kind of Gentiles, when they kind of ask me oh, is this the thing? And I say, well, actually in Jewish tradition, it tends to be more like this. And I say, no, of course, not every Jewish person views things the same way I do. But Worf is this is what is to be Klingon. And it's kind of it's he's overcorrected. He knows he's detached, but he's overcorrected.
And I want to call out Travis Taylor. First of all, you were one of the folks in chat last night that I remember being super cool. But also, that is a very good point. That is, I think about that a lot. And I think about that in relation to Keiko as well, because I think Keiko is an amazing character, except that very often she is a tool for someone else's story, and so she does things that feel silly. And it's hard to balance those things. And as my time comes to an end, I would also be remiss if I didn't point out that Worf let someone die because of racism, and also in Birthright.
No, the commander who it's third season. It's actually the one
where Geordi is on the planet, stranded on the planet with the Romulan officer.
Oh yeah.
And Worf is no, I hate Romulans, so I'm going to let him die.
Worf.
Again, understandable to have that trauma, not understandable to let someone die because
and
of
also
it.
To not be then kicked out of Starfleet.
Well, I don't know. I think it's probably I think it's a thing that is morally terrible, but should not be legally forced on someone. And then of course, speaking of Birthright, how horribly racist he was towards Bael. I'm in love with you until I find out you're part Romulan. That is just
yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. So wait, I have a question because this was also brought up in the chat too. Yeah. To a certain extent, is we're curious about Picard's version of Worf. So do you have any hope for what gets shown this season?
I am very interested in the fact that in the trailer we hear him say that he's a pacifist now.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm real interested in that. Because what I hope is how he got there is he was like, all right, I'm going to like really dig in and figure out what actual philosophy is for me and like what actually makes sense for me and the way that I live my life. And I like it could be a very, very positive signal for him, like getting his life together.
I will say in the LA theater, in the LA premiere, Worf had one of the loudest cheers. It was Crusher, Worf, and the ship that had those were the three that had the loudest cheers, which was hilarious.
Yeah, it's true.
Interesting.
So, and I feel bad that like NYC premiere only got one episode because
I know.
As someone who
Number
was
2
there,
is
I
great.
also felt bad.
We're sorry. Number 2 is really good. It's really, really good. It's coming.
Because the
It's really
curtain
good.
came down after the first one, and I just remember everyone went like, "Aww," because we
Yeah.
were hoping that
I
they
knew.
Right.
would announce it, but they
All right.
let us
I
make an
knew you would
episode.
all be.
We spent a lot of time discussing my unpopular
That's
Star Trek
okay.
opinion, and
That
I
was
don't want
good.
to. Oh no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just I feel like it's definitely time to give someone else the floor.
I mean, mine is kind of quick.
Go
I
for
don't
it.
think there's going to be a lot of argument. Michael Eddington never once read Les Miserables. He has not touched that book. That
Anna
man
and I have this discussion
has
so
never
often.
read Les Miserables.
Heather!
Oh,
No.
what a delight. Oh,
I
so good
love
to
you
see
so much, Heather. Yeah, Michael Eddington of the Maquis has never once read Les Miserables. It's a long book. I've read it. It's a great book. Victor Hugo's great. Yes, the key to reading that is once he starts talking about architecture, you skip that chapter. And then you won't have missed anything important. But anyway, the fact that he thinks in any way that Sisko is similar to Javert is like the worst literary analysis of all time. I swear to
Jamal
God.
Eddington just read the wiki for Les Mis.
Truly. But not even
Those
that. I'm
Cliff
like,
Notes?
there must have been another like
He watched the movie, but
adaptation.
didn't get it
No,
right.
but like another adaptation that we haven't even seen yet because it's so far in the future of Les Mis that is so detached from the source material because he's like, oh, Sisko, you're so much like Javert, who just like lives for the letter of the law, but not the spirit of. I love you, Melissa. Not the spirit of it. In what world is I'm gonna bring you to a baseball game, and also I'm gonna cook for everybody with real food, not replicator, Sisko, a letter of the law, like as I mean, in season 1. He even has that beautiful monologue where he talks about the problem with like Starfleet and the Federation not understanding the Maquis' point because they live.
It's easy to be a saint in paradise.
Easy to be a
One of the
saint in
best
paradise.
lines in Star
With
Trek
Earth.
ever.
And and for Eddington to be like, oh, all right, Javert, I totally believe that this isn't a ploy of I'm gonna murder a bunch of people because you think I disrespected the. I'm like, bruh.
Didn't you say he was? Didn't you say he was also wrong about growing tomatoes? I don't know anything about gardening, but he says it's really hard, and you said that it's not.
No,
Actually.
it's
not
not.
that hard.
It's not. I'm from the South. It's not that hard. Have you ever seen like what is
both
it?
both of my parents were horticulture majors.
You literally
grew
get
up
a bag
in
of dirt,
the
put seeds in it, and put it
seeds.
outside, and they tomatoes and
It's
plant grows.
not hard.
Well, yeah, Anna and I end up having this discussion a lot because I end up. I always end up whenever we're at a con together. I always end up in some form of a rant about how I don't think the Maquis. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I will not say the Maquis did nothing wrong. That is absolutely not the case. But I think that the Maquis were a lot more justified and not as much the bad guys as Star Trek wants them to be. So this is the conversation we always end up having. And it's like, yes, I hear you, but oh my God, Eddington.
It is the worst. And what always also bothers me is they like had the whole instead of using the view screen, they were like, oh, we had that weird
the holographic communicator,
which was so dumb.
It was real bad.
I'll say it.
It was real bad.
Dumb. And then I remember seeing something of one of the writers, Star Trek gardening tips, tomatoes, easy starters.
This is what you get on a Lambda Quadrant stream, my friends.
And
Star
We
Trek
said it was
gardening tips, and I'm
educational.
just
We
gay.
didn't say what
To
about.
me,
Yeah, to me.
like truly, I went on a rant to my sister one time, like messaging about how much I fucking hated it. Because also I'm a huge musical theater nerd. So for a while, when I was, especially because I love Deep Space Nine, I was like writing a lot of Deep Space Nine fanfic, and then I was like be listening to my like musical theater playlist, and then a random Les Mis song would pop in, and I would just get mad about Eddington, and I would just end up messaging my sister new
Girl, you
rants
gotta
about
let that go. That's gonna eat you inside.
I kind of and like
You gotta let it go.
yeah, I kind of view
Release.
Eddington as like the type of guy who like explained to you why he was like Hillary Clinton was a fascist and Bernie's the only way, but then didn't actually vote in the primaries. Like, you know what I'm saying? Where I'm like, you might have some arguments, but you don't understand how the world works.
You know who he actually reminds me of in some ways, and I feel like you may not appreciate this comparison, but Melanie, yes, that's the goal.
Yeah.
That is it. Listen, anytime for wherever 2 or 3 of the Lambda Quadrant are gathered together, this is exactly what goes down.
Eventually, BT was gonna give us a panel that's just fuck, marry, kill Star Trek characters.
I actually I feel like if Eddington were written today, he would be written a lot like the his name is escaping me now, the guy from Andor that recruits Cassian into the rebellion, the antique dealer guy who is like, I'm the hardcore rebel badass, and then I'm the like
Scarsdale.
Stellan Skarsgård, I think.
Yeah, Skarsgård, that's it. I know the name, I can't think of the name.
I legitimately bad theater opinions and gardening knowledge aside, because I think Eddington is someone who he started from a place where he really was doing it for like idealist. Luthen Rail, thank you, Jamal. I appreciate you. And Luthen, like, just a side note, super cool name. Whoever came up with that. But I feel like he got into it because he very much was like, he believed in the cause, right? And he thought what he was doing was right. And what you see Luthen Rail, like part of the journey you see him going on is the fact that like he used to be pretty idealistic too, and he knows that like when you're a revolutionary, you don't get to be idealistic. Like your like morality bar gets lower, et cetera, and that's a thing that just like if you're going to be a revolutionary, you really, really have to reevaluate your morality, and you end up, doing things like like Eddington
100%. And Eddington thinks Les Mis is an original Klingon opera, and Eddington thinks Victor Hugo was a Klingon because Eddington doesn't know shit about Les Mis.
You have not read French melodrama until you have read it in the original.
In high school, I swear this will be my last thing. In high school,
They were maintaining the prime directive. In
high school, I was in IB Music, which was like the collar level music. It was very snooty and stupid. But anyway, my entire final paper had a lot to do with Les Mis. And then, so at the same time, in order to not go insane in high school, all my English papers had to do with Les Mis because I was able, because the book as well as because I was able to be like, it's only Les Mis. I've only got time to really study the one thing for this one
that
paper.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Also use all that knowledge for the.
No, that's great.
So I remember watching that episode for the uniform, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're so much like Javert," and I was just like. Because again, he's talking about book Les Mis, not musical Les Mis. Because book Les Mis, Fantine is in ill health and is dying. Javert yells at her so hard she dies. In what universe would Cisco be like, hey, I see she's dying, but I'm going to yell a lot of upsetting information to you?
Oh, Anna is extraordinarily smart.
I think it's smart.
And
Yeah.
drunk.
But yeah.
Travis, to your point, this is a thing that I often think about a lot when thinking about like how societies get rearranged, right? Like, do you do an immoral thing like, I don't know, facilitate the assassination of a Romulan ambassador because you know the Federation literally will not survive if you don't? Like, what is actually the worst moral decision to make? To not do the thing and let the Federation disintegrate, or
Right.
a war crime? Like,
Right.
and I mean, I know assassinations aren't technically war
And
crimes in
In
every.
fairness to Cisco, he had not planned the assassination of Senator Vreenak. It just happened,
That's true.
and he had to learn to just be like, I can live with it.
Right. All right. Well, Nikki, Randy, who wants to go next?
Oh yeah. No.
Wait, side note.
I-
Who has the siren? It's usually me.
It's
Not me.
Oh, it's Anna.
Oh,
Anna
Anna,
lives-
of course, she's in the city. That's
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
Anna
in
lives,
the
lives
city.
like
I'm
across the street from us.
hospital, but it's also
Right.
because I'm too damn hot.
so
Anyway.
hot right now. Hospital living. The rain. It's like tiny houses, but they're all near hospitals.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I
I'll
can
go
go.
because yours.
you
I
wanna
think
go?
yours is going to be more substantive than mine, but who knows? We'll find out. So we were discussing
We
it a
did
little
spend
bit.
15 minutes on Les Mis.
To be clear, you spent 15 minutes on it.
Damn.
Yet we're here for it.
Audience,
Randy-
did you enjoy it?
Randy just grabbed
in
his
the
knife and
comments.
was like, assimilate
Speaking of
this.
war crimes.
Oh, welcome to Lambda Quadrant. people.
All right. We're good people, I promise.
sorry. It's
Okay.
out of love. It's out of love.
All right, Randy, drop it
but
on us. What do
Everyone
you
said
got?
how smart it was. Anyway, sorry. I shouldn't apologize for being #justgay. It's in my blood. So mine. Same thing. We spoke about this earlier, where like not it's not unpopular in some circles. Oh, you're muted. Are you trying to talk to
No,
us?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
oh.
muted because I'm yelling at my dog because
Oh,
he's being
gotcha.
very loud.
Oh, so sorry. I got confused. Wedgie. So not so popular in some circles, unpopular in others. But mine is that Star Trek is not as often as I wish it were, but sometimes very campy, and that is totally okay and a good thing for the show and a good thing for everyone. I feel like so many, and I think it's people who were old enough to understand TOS when it was airing and were watching it then. If that makes sense. It's those people I think nowadays who kind of poo-poo anytime there's something fun or funny or silly on Star Trek, and it's not just like military action 24 hours a day or exploration or whatever it is, action. And I mean, obviously are tied to a specific episode that's extremely campy and wonderful and amazing. Notwithstanding, but the one, what was the new one on Strange New Worlds? Yes. The one on
I
Strange New
forget
Worlds
the name,
was
but
so
yeah,
much fun. It was
so
so much
good.
fun, and
Which
like
one?
I can't remember the name. I'm bad at.
Was it the
episode
one where
names.
they switch bodies?
Where they're in the like fantasy world.
Oh!
Bab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, one of
Yeah,
my favorite
it's just-
episodes.
It's just so much
Leon
fun.
is like the princess and she's got
Yeah.
a little dog and
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Like, but
So
you get
good.
like you. I feel like you get more attached
Mm.
to the characters versus just seeing them
Yeah.
suffer all the time and like
That's exactly why, because you said it's okay for Star Trek to be that, and I actually think Star Trek is often at its best when it's that
Yes.
silly, right?
Yes.
Like
Fistful of Datas.
Fistful of
AKA
Datas,
AKA one of the only times Worf
Great
was
episode.
being a good father.
right? And then
so it's either this one
It's
or
like Elysian
this
something.
one.
Yeah.
Elysian Kingdom, Elysium Field,
And also some
something.
of the greatest costume design I've ever
Oh
seen.
yes, those were the
Yes.
costumes that or one of them. The dress
Yeah,
was the
the
one that was
dress-
at
It was
Star
at
Trek
Chicago.
Star
Yeah.
Trek Mission.
Yeah.
Move
we saw
Along
it before
Home.
we knew what it was.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Ella
Move
Marie.
Along
Oh,
Home.
Move Along Home. Oh my god.
Ella Moraine!
Ella Marie.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Legitimately love that episode. And I is it Cupid, the TNG episode where they do
Robin Hood?
Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood? Yeah.
Oh
Yes.
yes.
Well,
It's
and you know,
just one of the best moments in Star Trek ever is Worf walking over and grabbing the the loot or whatever out of Geordi's hand
Yes.
and just sorry.
also, and with that moment and talking about how campy it is and everything, like, not only is it funny that Worf smashes it, I think the innate comedy is that they're in this insane situation and Geordi's like, time to learn to play the lute. And that to me, I'm like, that is why I love Geordie as a character. He's like, I'm gonna try
I mean,
to
that
situation.
feels so in his nature as an engineer, though, right?
Yeah,
he's like,
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
oh, I see this thing. I'm not sure how it works. I'm immediately just going to learn how this thing works. Like that feels very Geordie to me.
Yeah, and I mean, like, exactly as you said, like, who doesn't love a campy Star Trek episode? And that's the thing, when the newer
Like, that was-
series.
Our
Yeah,
thing
exactly.
earlier was the whole Boimler, this is what Star Trek has become, right?
Oh,
The fact
yeah,
that we know that
right.
meme means that there are people that are out there and vocal and like
Exactly.
screaming about the fact that
Yep.
they're doing fun stuff.
And it's so
it definitely
ridiculous.
is there.
And I agree with you 100%, Randy, because it goes down to the ridiculousness of gatekeeping. Especially because as someone who my dad, as I say, he raised me right. He started me on original series, and then I watched animated series, and then I watched Next Gen. I went in order, and I loved the campiness of the 60s. So when people are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, campiness," I'm like, how is the original series not
Not
campy?
campy,
Like,
right?
and that's one of the
It
things
is.
I love about
Yeah.
it. I love it.
I actually think a lot of that comes down to, and of course not universal because nothing is, but a thing that I have seen that, like, if I applied this theory to a lot of the situations, it ends up making sense, is that folks get very attached to what they see when they're young because it doesn't seem weird, campy, or silly when you're young, and you grow up, and so you still have that attachment to it. And this is why, like, I have conversations with people who are younger than me, and I just mentioned Star Trek, and they're like, oh yeah, it looks so hokey to me. I can't. And I thought about it, and I was like, it doesn't look hokey to me because I grew up on it, because I watched it when I was a kid, so it makes
Right.
sense to me. But if
Right.
you've never seen Star Trek before, the
Right.
90s Star Trek, and
Yeah.
I mean, Discovery looks very modern, of course, but like
Right.
Yeah.
the Next Gen era,
Yeah.
TNG,
Yeah.
Voyager, it all looks very, very, very 90s, and so like therefore hokey to people. And I think we just kind of have to learn to accept that is the nature of Star Trek,
And
and
yeah,
doesn't mean
it
you
is.
have to like it, but
It's-
it doesn't
well,
make it
no.
not good or
Doesn't,
not like
yeah.
good
Star Trek.
sci-fi is very of its time. So after
Yes.
which is ironic sounding, but like that's the thing.
Yeah,
It's
it's
talking
true,
about the issues of today and then saying, well, let's go forward with this
Right.
and let's
Right.
discuss it.
No, very
And
true.
that's what Star Trek has always done. So of course it's going to be of its time. But that's literally today I was talking with my friend that I'm in the city with, and we were getting bagels, A+, New York City. Anyway, and we
Yeah.
he said to me, because he's not at all Trekkie, and he said, like, okay, a lot of people love Picard. Why don't people love Kirk? He was like, because he doesn't know anything, and he was basically saying, like, wait, was Picard first? Was Kirk first? And then I said, no, Kirk was first. He says, I feel like more people like Picard. And I said, well, Next Gen's definitely the more popular show. That was a hugely popular show. And I said, I love Kirk. I think that the fact that he just was like, yeah, I'll pretend to care about the Prime Directive, but I'm just going to help people in need is, I mean, how is that not attractive in a character? Like, I'm just going to help people in need. Obviously, what's so interesting about Next Gen is how they get into these more moral quandaries and just like, wait, you have
really
these
throw a
sets of
wrench
rules
and everything.
rules
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of things.
the
But
good ship Lollipop.
yeah, and like you have in original
The
series,
serious
first of
writer
all-
has their own saddle.
yes. But also in original series, not only do you have these insanely campy episodes, you do have these things where, like, Kirk falls in love with a woman in the past, and if he lets her live, she has to die, or else, like, the Nazis take over. Like, holy shit! Like, that's emotional, though. I mean, ridiculous when you water it down, but I mean, that's we had these like emotional episodes.
What in I think to modern day Trek and like the campiness, silliness part of it, I actually think it can be a really good vehicle for exploring character relationships. And specifically, I'm thinking of Tendi and Rutherford building the Cerritos model and like bonding over it, and like figuring that whole thing out together. And then they're like running from the Duplers through the Cerritos, and the model ends up being, and like it's all very silly. But like what you're actually watching in that moment is Rutherford is so frustrated with himself. He's having like what I would maybe recognize as like PTSD symptoms from like being injured, losing his memory, feeling like he's not good enough at anything. And like that journey really is of him like regaining his confidence, like figuring out like, no, I am smart. I am capable. And he and Tendi like growing together through that. And it's all like very silly and funny, but the like second, third, half dozen, 12th, 15th time I've seen that episode, like it really turns into that. And I see like a really sweet, like good friendship developing there, like just underneath the surface of all of the silly stuff happening. So I think that is that is a far deeper opinion than I think you give yourself credit for.
I agree.
Yes, and we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the episode of Discovery, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, where there's the time loop Groundhog Day. I mean, if that
all starts with the Gormagander.
Yeah, I mean, it's so peak Star Trek of like we have
yes.
Invaders from the fifth dimension.
She is a drag queen.
Vajazzle? Did someone say Vajazzle? That's not campy, but that episode's kind of campy though.
Like campy.
But
in that same episode where they introduced the character Vajazzle in the first season of Picard, just the fact that Picard, who has always had an English accent despite being a Frenchman, is undercover with that French accent for the first time. It's like
I know, right?
That campiness was amazing.
Oh my God!
Yes.
That level of joy while still having those interesting plots is so good.
It's so
I mean, and I think
I also think it speaks very well to the writing of the show. Like when you do it and you do it well, right? Like I would say Lower Decks, Mike McMahon does it top notch, right? Because I think it is more of the love, like it's how the fans love the show, right? Like, and that's why, like, look. Sub Rosa has very real issues. I agree with the vet on her. I know her strong opinions about Sub Rosa, and I do agree. Yes. But we also love it because it's campy in its own way.
Right.
And you can later make fun of it if you want to make fun of it, or you can joke about it, or you can love on it, or whatever. I think that's why those campy episodes are needed. It also breaks up some of the more serious conflicts and things, and you need that. Like,
but you
don't
like
a drama, but you need some levity sometimes.
You don't get to know somebody if the only side of them is them at work fighting things like that. You don't get to know those people, right? Like you do when they're doing something else. And like,
I would argue
solving
the franchise would not be living over 50 years long. Because I mean, let's talk about there's amazing television out there that is really serious, like The Wire and like The West Wing, and things like that, which are all like great pieces of television.
But even The West Wing had campiness.
Even The West Wing,
like I'm doing a rewatch right now, and West Wing had campiness, and I love it.
Like, you have these series like that were were almost entirely serious, and at the same time, people are like, oh man, I'm not sure I'm ready to go back into it whenever they do reboots and stuff kind of thing. Where Star Trek, I hear there's new Star Trek. I go, oh.
Like, and
ridiculous.
And you can go back and watch. You can go back and watch whatever episode you emotionally need at that time, right? Like if there's an episode, like if you need to cry, there's an episode for that, right? Like if you need to laugh, there's an episode for that. Like if you want to think seriously, I think that's one of the great things about it.
That episode where Troy, Data, Picard, and I think Geordi were all coming back from the conference, and they were like out of phase with everybody else.
Oh yeah.
Captain Picard.
Just drawing a smile face and then laughing.
Incredibly unbroken sentence.
Yeah, like those moments make you go more from like, oh, he's the captain character to like, oh,
Timescape
this
Yvette,
guy's
yes, thank you.
yeah.
Oh,
You go from this character's the captain
That was
to
a fun one.
this guy's like, I like this guy. I mean, season 1 Picard is kind of
Smiley face and the exploding warp core.
yeah.
Yes,
And it's the smiley face and the giggling. Yep.
yes.
So
Like,
good.
that's
Yes,
listen,
yes,
those kinds of
He
moments
was
are why
high on the whatever the effects were.
Right. Yeah.
those kinds of moments are the reason we have a Picard series.
BL would like
Yeah.
a legal Trek show, and absolutely, we need to see what Philippa Lavoie is getting up to after her decision in Measure of a Man. I feel
Though I
like
will
she's had a career after
Though I
that
will
episode.
say she
Right.
makes some horrible calls that whole time. Riker, you have to defend something you've just said you don't believe.
Well,
I'm
in fairness,
going
that was I mean, to be clear, that is a terrible policy, but it was not her decision. It was Starfleet procedure.
Yeah, but that's not
In her
good
defense.
legalese.
All right, let's move on to Nikki.
All right,
to make sure we
Nikki.
get it in.
Nikki
Okay.
has a bomb to drop, and I feel like
I
That's
did.
right. Yes,
if
yes,
you don't
yes.
know Nikki, I think it would be important for you to explain the
give us some
context for
background.
why this
I
opinion is
will.
such a big
I
deal.
will.
Okay.
I
Really
think I'm gonna fight you a little bit, Nikki.
Uh-oh.
You don't know. Oh yeah, I don't know if I took. Were you on? I don't know. Anyway, so as people can tell behind me, there's a lovely little Crusher mug right there. Yep, there it is. I'm a huge Crusher fan. Huge. My Twitter now is just I stand Beverly Crusher. Like that's what it has become. So as we were talking about like what panels we were gonna do, and we came up with this one, I'm like, I don't know if I really have any that are not known to the greater population of Star Trek fandom of like this is good, this is not, this is whatever, right? Like the Worf thing, it lended itself well to Callie's. I do have another small one, but I don't think we'll have time where Beverly's a tease and it's not okay. Like that's but this I just came up with the other day, and I have to explain it to everyone. So, and it hurts me to say this too. Pulaski was actually good for the show, and yes, I said the doctor. The doctor's name.
That is not the take that I thought it was gonna be.
No.
Oh, the look on Anna's face.
That's so not what I thought the opinion was. I thought it was gonna be something else.
I know. Here's
That
the thing.
Pulaski was
Here,
good for the show.
the TLDR of all of this is Pulaski is good for the show because it brings Bev back, right? Okay, so now let me explain it. So,
Into that.
in the season that does not exist, the season does not exist. I'm just telling you. I usually don't watch it. I've watched it only once all the way through. So here's the thing. I think it was in a weird way.
Melissa's
she was good, right?
Melissa's shocked in the comments. I'm just
I
like,
know, right?
Like,
Even if that's shocked, if that is shocked, I know. There are people out there, clearly some of them in the chat, they love Pulaski. That's totally fine. Me, not so much. Obviously, we know the reason why. That's part of my point.
Yep.
The reason why Pulaski was brought on board, as we now know, is Gates was fired because she spoke up and said that things were sexist and there were issues with producer Maurice Hurley, and he went to Gene and Rick Berman and said it's me or her, and it stuck with the boys club, right? So they brought Pulaski in, and they wanted Pulaski to be like the Bones character of TOS. The reason why I think she was actually good for the show is because it actually pointed out the fact that this is a next generation of crew. We can't go back to the original characters. We have to have different characters, right? Yes, Data is like the Spock, but Picard, as we just talked about, very different from Kirk, and it's needed, right?
Right.
So you can't really have this Bones character playing off of the Picard more serious character. It didn't work, right? Like Pulaski and Picard, they butted heads all the time, and not in the good way that like Beverly and Picard butted heads, right?
Right.
Like somebody else put in the chat, Picard will like take you out, like get you or make sure that you're not addicted to your drugs anymore, but then leave you. Like that was one of Beverly's huge sticking points of why she was so pissed about like why are we not helping them, right? Like that's also very clear as what we know about this new season of Picard is like the Doctors Without Borders. It's like, look, the Federation has abandoned a bunch of people and they need help, so that's what I'm going to go do. So Pulaski, though, yes, also awful to Data, right? Like it I don't know if that was intentional, to shine a light, like we can't be bigot to these, to
Right.
a synthetic life
wondered
form.
if they were
Right.
trying to go so far into the bones, like McCoy always was like kind of bigoted to Spock, but Spock gave his own back, and that was kind of
Right.
why it worked.
Okay. Right.
But I
Right.
think,
But
but
the only
Dave's
the
trying
only
to
thing that
fix
Data
it.
gives back is when
Sad.
she mispronounces his name and he just says, no, it's Data, right? Like, and she says it, and it's just a bunch of other things. And later she sort of comes to tolerate him. There's no like,
Right.
you are a member of this crew, you are valuable, you are whatever. Like that's
Well,
all
there
it
is a little bit in I forget the name of the episode, but the Stratagema episode, when he's like,
Oh, there you
and I feel like that's actually that's like the culmination of that relationship. But I would say actually I have a lot good to say about Pulaski. I don't hate her as much as a lot of people do. I do think with her and I mean some other places too. I just feel like it doesn't sit right with me that people who are in Starfleet are like that openly racist ever. Like Pulaski definitely grows throughout, which is cool. And I appreciate that. But also for her to just be that blatantly like you're not a real person. Like that just it doesn't sit right with me that someone would have that attitude in that culture.
I totally agree. Yeah, it did seem very like
what?
Yeah.
But I mean, we know bigotry has a long life too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just that's the one thing.
Wait, hold on. While I agree with to a certain extent what Dave is saying that like Pulaski probably did need much more to flesh out. It was very clear though, just within one season, that character was not liked. The fans did, overall in general, did not like it. True, the character was not working within the other, cast members, right? And Jonathan Frakes often says, it was like lightning in a bottle. We just all very much got along.
That's why the show is still popular today. Like it's just lightning in a bottle. Yeah, you can't.
The fans doing a letter writing campaign and Patrick himself specifically going to executives and going to Gates and say, will you please come back? Like, so look, I still don't necessarily like Pulaski.
I
know.
That does not happen.
I will always love Crusher. Like that is my love. But in a weird way,
you appreciate
she was good for the show because it pointed out that what was true, which was Crusher was actually a very, very, very popular character in the first season, if not one of the most popular, right up there with Picard and Data, more so than any of the other ones to a certain extent, is that she was very much needed to be brought back. And then unfortunately, all of the circumstances, because scripts are already written and whatever else, I don't think she got her due, which is why I'm, excuse my language, fucking loving season 3 of Picard, because as Gates has even said herself, like she feels good about the story and how this character story arc goes. So I am huge, like that's where I'm at. So it was just interesting that like as we were thinking about this, I was like, wait a minute, in a weird way, she was actually good for the show.
Yeah.
Yes, in the context of like the production, but I will also say I think with the knowledge that we know, we make many jokes about her being turned into an elevator shaft.
Definitely a running joke.
It's the Doctor we don't speak of. It's the season that doesn't exist.
Say, I agree with you. I also
that's a tough one too. Like for all the people who just really quick, for all the people who love her, it was a tough situation for the poor actress, for the cast, for everyone. It was a difficult situation to have to like.
Please do not give me like hate Twitter. But
I also
the threads are being constructed now.
I also want to say.
What did I do? What did I do?
No, you're
oh my God! Put Melanie's comment on screen, please.
Yeah, she got the shaft. I would also say though, I think Pulaski, in the context of knowing that she was a one-season character, is a good character when we know what we know now that Crusher's coming back.
Right.
I actually would have loved to have seen her in like an episode of Deep Space Nine. Or something of
that
like,
would have been interesting.
Oh yeah, she was like on a ship that was passing through, or like going to visit the Gamma Quadrant for some research or something.
More of her, and And
That would have been cool.
like we discussed, because I will say I do kind of appreciate though, like we do have this weird new android. He's a one of a kind, and I do appreciate so much that the entire crew is like, we love him, we love Data. And then it is kind of like how weird it is that there's the one like sand in the ears kind of thing that's just kind of like Data, and it's like, and how everyone's like, what are you doing? No, he's our sweet boy.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like it, like I
Must be
I-
defended at all costs.
Yeah.
and like she's
I-
wrong. She's 100% in the wrong.
Yeah.
But it is
Right.
kind of interesting to see that perspective.
Yeah.
I don't love it coming from someone in Starfleet,
Right. True.
but
Well, I also find it interesting because, you know, Jean's thing, and this was recently talked about we talked about it in the last panel too. I mean, one of Jean's thing was in amongst the characters, there wouldn't be conflict in the future, right? It'd be all happy, whatever. This absolutely introduces like conflict between the characters. So it's very interesting that like that's what got brought in. And I don't know if also Jean was like, no, this isn't going to work because I want to go back to that. I don't actually know, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what it was that said, no, we are done with Pulaski. We're going to bring, other than what I do know, which is the fans writing the letters and
Right.
Patrick himself trying to speak up for her and bring her
also,
back. But
sorry, this is literally just for queer things. To bring this up, hashtag queer things, just for queer things. There is just a historical figure, General Pulaski.
I agree, Aaron. I agree.
Yes. General Pulaski was a member of the American Revolution. He was a Polish cavalryman who basically father of our cavalry, and later, looking at remains, was intersex.
Ooh,
Wow.
interesting.
Yeah.
History
so
lesson within. Remember earlier we were talking about how smart Anna is? There you
Yeah.
go.
Revolutionary War especially, but yeah, so just like talking about like queerness and hashtag just queer things. But so the name Pulaski, I always the like kind of the father of the American cavalry was an intersex person, which I always think is
Wow.
Interesting.
That
Love
is
it.
very interesting.
I
obviously
love it.
they unfortunately
That's
had
way
to
more
hide
than
it.
just having a furniture
course.
store, because that's
Yeah.
what I've seen it as.
We've
In the
only got a
real
couple of
world.
minutes left, so I would like to just bullet point a couple. We don't have to
Oh yes.
do discussion or anything like that. But a couple
Let's
of
see if
bullet
we
points.
get any comments about them, and then we'll see if we want to talk about that later.
Threshold is one of the best Voyager episodes, unironically.
It's one of my favorites.
Move along home is a good episode of Deep Space Nine.
I do want to talk about
Um,
Move Along Home really quick.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay.
2
In
minutes.
a later episode of Deep Space Nine, Sloane shows up in Bashir's room and says, and Bashir says, I could always scream for help, when he says, like, oh, I took the thing. And he goes, but not in character for you to just, it's too undignified. As if in Move Along Holmes, Bashir hadn't screamed and been like, when you try and wake yourself up from a dream?
Oh,
And I was like, Sloane, you don't know this man. But the fact that he didn't scream, that's what we call character growth.
and I love you, Nikki, but season 2 of TNG has a lot of good episodes, actually, as does season
I
1.
know it does. I know it does. I know. I do know that. Like, I will say,
But we
Desert
have
Man
to.
Part is one of my absolutely.
Uh,
In front of the baby, not in front of the
and
baby.
and this is probably doesn't count as an unpopular opinion, but more an opinion held because of relatively not known information. It really bums me out that all of the Klingon you hear through Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, and some of Enterprise is entirely wrong. The producers didn't care enough to get people who actually knew the language, so they just opened a book and was like, "Oh, I see that word and I see a Klingon word, so we'll just like put the things together." So almost all of the Klingon that you hear in the 90s and early 2000s Star Trek is completely wrong,
Right.
which is one of the reasons Discovery was great, because they hired a whole bunch of people who really knew what they were doing.
Right.
The
Yeah.
actors had dialect coaches, and it was mwah.
Yeah, so much so sadly that people got used to the '90s one, and when they heard the new one, they're like, "Oh, I don't like it. It sounds weird and gross."
Agreed, Faith.
And it's like,
Agreed.
well,
High
but
Faith,
that's
by
how
the
it's
way.
supposed
Agreed.
to be.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely, Faith.
Yeah.
All
All
the
right.
Maquis were mostly okay. I wouldn't say they did nothing. I wouldn't say they did nothing wrong, but
Eddington was an idiot, though.
right.
Okay, we got to wrap up. We're
Yep.
1 minute out.
Yep.
All right.
Coming up next
We-
are our good.
yeah.
What? Coming up next are our good friends from To Proudly
Proudly
Go.
Go.
Proudly
In
go!
case you don't know our history, Heather actually was part of the Lambda Quadrant.
Was one of our founding
because
members.
yeah, she was one of our founding members. We love her to death. But because of the toughness of doing things bi-coastally and what she's doing, and it's very local, and she took care of it. She is now doing that, and she is wonderful and does so many fun things.
Love
So
Proudly Go.
please click on the link up, down, left, right, wherever it is to go over to them and give them your love equally as you did to us, which we so much appreciate.
Threshold
Her
won an
drag
Emmy?
is- Her drag is so great. What?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Who? What?
Sorry, someone
I don't
said in the chat that Threshold won an Emmy.
Oh well.
They
God
might
bless
have.
them.
It deserves one. Because it's a great character development episode for Tom Paris and a really great mentorship thing with Janeway. But the lizard sex gets all the headlines.
Makeup Emmy. That's where. There you go.
For makeup?
Yes.
Well,
the next
that
thing is
makes
at
sense.
11:15 Eastern. Yes.
For what?
Yeah, it's 11:15 is the next one, so got some.
Oh, it
time
is.
to-
Or 8:15.
Oh, thank you.
There's a 15-minute break. Yeah. There's a little.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
First
yeah.
one
But
for
yeah.
Star Trek. First Emmy for Star Trek was Threshold. God bless.
See.
We love.
If only
We
it could
love
have been
you,
Sub
nerd.
Rosa.
Oh.
We don't know.
We
Bye, Sorry, I had to. I
We
just
need
had
a
to.
new
Emily, I
banner
got
that
for
has
a
Yeah,
while.
absolutely. Yeah. I don't think we got in any Beverleys in the last panel, so absolutely.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Beverly.
Beverly. If you're going to be on the boat, now we're just riffing because we're just waiting for Heather to start. But if you're going to be on the boat, please look for us when we wear our costumes, because I don't have any pictures, so I'll just say it. I got a wig for Ronan. It's a real wig. I had someone actually style a Ronan wig. I don't know that I've ever seen that. I've seen just a wig, but like a styled actual wig. So I will have. That
I've seen a drag queen do it. But yeah.
A Ronan wig. Oh, okay.
Well, not a Ronan wig, but a style. Oh, you mean specifically for Ronan?
Specifically for Ronan.
Yes.
I've seen people just put on a wig, but like not one that was like cut and styled for him. Yeah.
Wait, so am I
Okay,
telling?
my bad.
Am I saying what I'm gonna do?
If you like.
Are you going to be the candle?
Yes.
Well, I can
So
tell
I'm
you
gonna
that the
be-
reason I have bangs and red hair again is for.
Yeah. So
You know,
if Anna's gonna be the redhead, that leaves me as Nana's dead.
Nana's not dead. You're not Nana. Nana's dead. Leave me alone.
Nana. I'm gonna be Nana. Just saying.
It's gonna be a.
I also have a wig. Not a good wig. It's just a wig.
Don't be yucking
Just a
on
wig.
Nana's yum.
But please come to Deck 6 and find our doors
Yes.
are actually kind of next to each other. So we did a whole thing. We're just saying
It's a
Caldos
whole
maybe
thing.
on Deck 6.
There might be a subspace rift that leads directly to Caldos. I'm just saying.
If you're
We're just
thinking
saying.
about,
And then
what
we
you
already have
do,
next year's
no.
door decorations planned
we
too.
already
so
have those planned
you
too.
might want to be on next year's boat. We're just dropping that now.
All right, let's head out. Let people take a break. Thank
Yes,
you so
take a
much
break,
for
go to the
joining us
bathroom.
again. Go get a snack, go to the bathroom, and then go see Heather and the crew in their show coming up next.
To Bowlby.
Bye, guys.
Yes. We love you all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.